IT Pro TV, an easy, entertaining approach to online IT training. Stream over 2,000 hours of up-to-date, high-quality video content live and on demand. For a free 7-day trial and for a limited time, get 50% off a monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. Visit itpro.tv/enterprise security and use the code ES50. LogRhythm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns and application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logRhythm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. Are you worried about PCI compliance? Does your development team understand or care about security? Are you ready to face a breach of your customer's sensitive data? See the worst that can happen before it does. Black Hills Information Security can help you help management see the future. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a web application penetration test can mitigate the risk before you go live. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. A couple of quick announcements. ITPro.tv's courses now include ITIL Managing the Lifecycle and Microsoft Hello for Business. Premium annual memberships include all video content as well as access to virtual labs and Q&A forums. You'd normally pay $85.70 a month or $857 per year. However, our listeners can now enjoy a 50% off discount for your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. That's right. ES50 is the discount code. itpro.tv/enterprise security. Take advantage of that. We will also be at Source Boston next week. The discount code for that is Security Weekly. It gives you $100 off the conference or training packages. I will be speaking, as well as Karen Elazari will be giving one of the keynotes. I can't wait to meet Karen in person. She's awesome. I interviewed her on Paul Security Weekly a while back. She's just like one of my, I say she's one of my favorite people. I have a lot of favorite people, pretty much everyone in this industry. But Karen is special, and the chance to see her present in person is really cool. So check us out at Source. We'll be doing Hacker Movie Trivia in the booth for our third time this year. And if you check out our YouTube channel, you can see some of the things we've been doing at conferences. It's entertaining and informative. So now, kind of going off from a high note to some of the news that's happening in enterprise security this week. I'll start with Tanium since it's first on our list. Not good things happening at Tanium. Basically, two different things are happening. One, they're being accused of using one of their customers that's in healthcare, using them as an example in their demos, and leaking information about them. So they didn't obfuscate the customer's information when giving demos, which in especially security is a big no-no.
It actually comes across as though they had full access. It wasn't like a demo of CAN data. It seems like it was live network data that was coming off of this network.
And that, so that's interesting. I've been in that situation as a vendor before, and you never, ever showed that. You would take screenshots or videos, and you would obfuscate anything that could tie back to that customer. And there are certain agreements that vendors have with customers that say, hey, we'll either give it to you for free or at a significant discount if we can use you in our sales process, essentially. And that's a good thing for both parties, don't get me wrong. It's a good thing if you're a consumer of that product, because the vendor can say, hey, here's actual data from a real live site that's taking advantage of our product. However, you have to obfuscate that data. You can't let it be tied back to the organization.
Well, and this is isn't this right back to back with issues about whether or not they're terminating people inappropriately as well? It just seems like this has been an incredibly bad week for them.
Week for a lot of for a couple of companies in particular. Yeah. So the Tanium CEO also didn't really admit to firing people right before they were fully vested, but that's a pretty easy thing to prove. Because this person is on LinkedIn is no longer at Tanium, and you can kind of like do them like it's a hard thing to lie about, to be honest with you. Although I don't know for sure, but that's what it sounds like, is that right before they were vested, they were getting terminated. And that's bad. And this was also the one where the CTO left, or was that Cylance? I don't remember.
That's Cylance. That's okay. Cylance. We're crossing bad weeks of bad companies. Yeah. We're crossing the streams, Paul.
So just a final note on Tanium. I have seen their product. I've spoken with Tanium. They were nice people. People have great success stories with their product. I've seen a demo of their product. It looks great. And like I said, there's a lot of people with success stories of Tanium. If you look at them from a startup perspective, which is a different show, but a startup perspective, like their growth is just unbelievable. So it's too bad that they're getting some of this bad press, and let's hope they're able to make a course correction here and get back on the straight and narrow path.
Well, and let's also step back for a couple of seconds. This could easily have been one situation where one of their salespeople had access to this data. And just as we've talked about the last session, it's very, very, very common for salespeople to do really incredibly dumb things. And this may not be a company-wide policy that they did, and I somewhat doubt that it was, but it was clearly a mistake by somebody. And I guess we'll have to see how they handle it. If they come out and they say, yeah, this was a screw up, somebody messed up, they're fired, they're no longer working with us, that's a good approach to this. But if we step back, the product itself is still sound. We have a number of customers that are using them. I have nothing, just like you said, I hear nothing but good things about it. And let's just see how they handle it. And as far as like firing people right before they're fully vested in the company, once again, time will play out on that. And I'm sure that if that's the case, that's going to play out in court. I'm sure there will be lawsuits at some point if it ever gets to that point.
And, I mean, they've got some work to do to improve the image of their corporate culture to get new talent to come work for them as well after that.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. That's true. Now, I did find it interesting. The article by Riley, I'm getting most of my information from Ars Technica. It seems like they kind of were like in biz journals. It's like they were stepping over themselves to make it look like it was an alleged abuse. They didn't talk about the organization. The organization came right out. The hospital, was it El Camino Hospital or something like that, came right out and said, no, we did not give them authorization to do this. We're doing an investigation. But it was weird. The biz journal article was really, really kind of stepping around it. You know, it's basically allegedly abusive behavior and exposing hospital data. It's kind of like they're stepping around actually bluntly calling what happened here clearly what it was, which was a mistake, and really not calling out what hospital it was, because the hospital came out and had a public statement about this. This wasn't something that they were trying to hide.
Well,
nope, scratch that. It's at the bottom of the article. Oh, okay. It helps if you read the entire article, Paul. I've noticed.
I've noticed that too. Yep. So moving on to Cylance, who's been had some interesting news articles come out. Of course, they had the big layoff. 1 in 4 people, I'm told, was the number?
1 in 5, I thought.
5.
I didn't think it was quite that many. It wasn't 25. It was about 20%.
And then after that, in chronological order, their CTO stepped down. Is that correct? That was one of the original members of Cylance. And now it's coming out. And now details on this are kind of all over the place. And the article I linked to is from Security Week, and they have quotes from like competition in the endpoint security space, which I'm not sure that's really like.
I love the one. Did you read the Carbon Black quote at the bottom?
Yes, I
did. What is it? Let's see. Oh crap! Where's the Carbon Black quote?
It's an interesting read, nonetheless.
It's unbelievable that business today can't trust the people who they rely on to keep them secure. And then they went further and they said something to the effect of, here we go. The actions Cylance has taken has put their customers and our national security at risk.
I think it's unfair to ask Cylance's competition like what they think about this current situation, which, I mean, on the surface, it can seem really bad. However, you know, basically what the malware samples that Cylance was using was a custom set, and someone did some digging into it and claimed that some of them weren't malware at all, that Cylance was stacking the deck. And I really just think it speaks to how difficult it is to test the effectiveness of endpoint protection products. So, I mean, I don't necessarily like blame Cylance, right? Because I think a lot of the tests that are out there, and many of them mentioned in this article, are geared towards one type of product or another. So I get where they're coming from. Let's just hope that there's not a lot of nefarious behavior going on when they're doing demos and such, which is what it's pointing to.
But let's back up a little bit, because we do have a little bit of experience in this specific area. I mean, Cylance makes themselves an absolutely wondrous target, right? They go out and they talk about, basically 100% protection. They talk about their unbelievable demo and all of this crap. And it's just a matter of time. Anytime you try to set up something like this, that before that actually starts collapsing around you. And I think that's what happened with Cylance, is they've been talking about these amazing feats of strength in their product, and it's been slowly slowly percolating around the edges that they're full of crap. It started on Twitter. You had a number of people that were finding ways to start to bypass Cylance, and it was really, really good at detecting a lot of different types of malware, traditional malware. And you started getting people like Casey Smith or Subti that would basically say, here's some ways to bypass this product. And then you had Talkit, what is it? No, not Talkit. Taco Rocket went through and demonstrated how he bypassed Cylance. And then we bypassed it in 4 different ways. And then Cylance comes out, and they like to say, well, none of these were actually bypass techniques. They didn't qualify as bypass techniques. And it's like it's like the emperor's new clothes. Like, really stand up and own it for what it is. Mm-hmm. Don't constantly put people down. And further, there's a lot of history, and this was documented by Sophos as well. If you remember, there's some more bad press too, where anytime you try to do any comparative analysis with Cylance was taking very, very, very stringent actions against anybody that would go public with any comparative analysis that they didn't explicitly approve of beforehand.
Well, and that's like CrowdStrike suing NSS Labs mm-hmm. and things like that. Yeah.
Yep, and I also think it's hilarious at the very end of this article, you have Vikram coming out and saying, I don't think Cylance did anything wrong. Of course, their report said Cylance was best of breed and stopped absolutely everything. Mm. So I think this goes back to kind of a theme of the show. If you're doing marketing like BS, you're going to get called on it in this industry. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of time. And the more you try to clamp down and try to push down on it, the worse it's going to be whenever it actually pops open, because you make yourself a very large target.
Well, I think also similar to vulnerability management, right? And other endpoint protection falls in that. Anytime you offer a protection product or something that can be measured, there's always going to be stuff that you don't catch. There's always going to be a vulnerability you don't have a signature for yet or a way to detect. You might in the near future, or it may not be enough of an issue for your customers. Certainly, I experienced that, and it's like, at what point do we evaluate security technology on the basis of whether or not in the edge cases it can be bypassed or something can slip through, versus like how much it can really help us in our own environment? And everyone's environment is different. Now, endpoint protection is different in that obviously a bypass technique can be used by massive amounts of people. But it suffice it to say, John, like, everyone's got a bypass technique, and there always is going to exist a vulnerability or some kind of exposure that someone's product doesn't detect. You know, whether that's a CASB, like whoever it is, there's always going to be edge cases, right?
I think that you're always going to have the edge cases, but I think the fundamental problem that we're talking about here is that a lot of the people that make these purchasing decisions, you got your CISOs, CSOs, CTOs, CIOs, and so on, are unfortunately making these decisions on these shootout papers like NSS Labs released, which was total complete garbage. And then you've got a lot of them that are making recommendations based on what the vendors are saying in vendor marketing swag, which, once again, you shouldn't be making your decisions based upon those things. But those decisions are being made. And whenever a company makes those unbelievable claims, whenever they make claims that are beyond any sense of any logic in this industry, that company has to be held to those standards. I agree with you. There's always going to be bypass techniques, and we rip on it tongue in cheek as far as marketing departments. But honestly, there needs to be a little bit of accountability for a company saying that they can stop 100% of attacks and the reality of the situation. And I think that that's what we're seeing. We need to see more of that, to be honest. Because like with vulnerability scanning wars, I mean, you know, granted, we were very, very, very tied to Tenable. We all love Nessus. We use Nessus all the time. But at the end of the day, whenever we look back on some of the squabbles between Rapid7 and Tenable, a lot of them seem kind of stupid in hindsight. And I think it was, who was the guy that we talked to that went over to Rapid7? We started having good conversations, and now we have a good relationship with a lot of people at Rapid7. And it was just kind of petty squabbles in the background.
Yeah, and I also think, too, that with respect to endpoint protection or vulnerability management, however you want to phrase it, when you're a C-level and you're making the decision, one of the things that weighs into that, John, to go back to your comments on it, is the cost of rip out and replace and what's the benefit, right? And I agree that if anyone says they have 100% protection of anything, like, that's not good. But if I know at an executive level that I'm getting the truth, that I know that I'm getting better protection in some area, and maybe there's some other cases where I'm not getting protection, but I've done the math, like Rami said, and my cost to rip and replace is going to give me X, Y, and Z benefit, and I'm going to recognize a better return on my investment, That's the decisions I want to see people making, but armed with the right information. It's okay. If you want to rip out what you have and put Cylance in place, if that's going to help you be more secure and you can measure that, that's fine. The fact that, you might have some bypasses in there, as long as you know about those, that's okay.
I think that's fine. I agree with that 100%.
So it's curious to see what is going to happen in endpoint protection, especially with Cylance. I don't know what the future is for this industry, whether you have more than one endpoint protection, whether or not you recognize the limitations of endpoint protection and start to do something different, or there's like the hybrid approach where I get some kind of endpoint protection and then I'm adding on maybe some other more specialized endpoint products to fill some of those gaps, and that's a good strategy. I think of Minerva Labs, great ransomware protection, like great, awesome protection, right? It's not a full suite. It's kind of like an add-on thing that I would add on to fill some of these gaps, because I don't think any one product that you're just going to be able to plop on a system is going to be able to do everything.
And this gets into the problem for a lot of these companies. I think you touched on it, and I think you're absolutely correct. If you're Cylance, you've got to be freaking out. And the reason why I say that you should be freaking out, and you honestly should be freaking out, is there's nothing that Cylance is doing that is unique from the perspective that Cylance is the only company in the world that can do that. Right. You have a lot of companies that are in this behavioral and analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence game. The formulas and the mathematical algorithms that they're using, they're not patentable. They're used by everybody. So how do you compare, if you're somebody like Cylance, or if you're somebody like CrowdStrike, whenever all of a sudden you start having Symantec and McAfee, and maybe even in some regards somewhere down the line Microsoft decides to start getting into this, that are doing 80% of what you do. And this gets into something that you talk about a lot. What is the problem that you're trying to solve and what makes you unique? But what happens whenever your competitors, who are already in the place, you're trying to displace them? How are you going to displace them whenever they can basically say that they're doing a large percentage of what you do at the core of your product? How do you do that? And like you said, cost of rip out and replace is huge. And for a lot of these companies, the decision to rip out a Symantec, rip out a McAfee is not small, because they're tied into their email protections, their data loss prevention protections, their host-based firewall protections. It is a massive rework, and Cylance doesn't have the entire product suite that a McAfee or Symantec brings to the table. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I'm not saying that this is yay Symantec and McAfee, because they're behemoths that need to be brought down. But anybody that's going to be investing a crap ton of money in these products needs to start asking these questions of companies like Cylance, of companies like CrowdStrike, and they better have a damn good answer. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sinking a dime into these companies, because I don't see their long-term viability unless your exit strategy is to get bought out by one of the big players.
Yep. Let's talk a little more about some endpoint strategies. Observit. Are you familiar with Observit?
Yep, absolutely.
What do you think of their? I kind of think of it as like I think of it as spying on your users. Like it more. Yeah. It's like a real time thing. Like you think of like a Cylance or Carbon Black or whatever. Like they just sit there, and it's more machine learning, somewhat artificial intelligence. With Observit, it's kind of like, I got to be like there, like going, hey, you user, like stop doing that. Like I'm spying on my users. That's just, it's weird to me. It seems weird. It's creepy.
It's a little bit creepy, and it's, this kind of gets back into that question of what do you do if you're in this niche area. And it's interesting because if you look at Observit is now starting to get into instant prevention of security breaches and all kinds of other crap. And I think that that's a way a company scrambles to try to handle the big boys starting to come in and do what they already do. Right. But yeah, it is absolutely creepy to have that type of ability to see what it is exactly people are doing in your organization. But for some organizations, data loss prevention and what do they call it? Reducing shrink. What is it? Shrink is whenever you steal something from the company. There's actually some value there as well.
No, I agree. Malwarebytes and Forescout form a partnership. This to me,
God,
if I could find a knack, and I was in this space, right? If you could find a knack, I don't know what they call it today, but I used
Forescout doesn't like to be called a knack.
Yeah,
yes,
they have some
network access control.
It's network access control that could somehow partner with some technology that can do any level of validation generation of hosts that are coming on the network, or if a host on the network changes its status from being a good computer to a bad computer, if something can tell that and then automatically switch them into like a bad network zone, that's awesome. And I can tell you, if technology exists to do that today, that is just awesome. When I was looking into it 10 years ago or so or whatever, it didn't exist. People claimed that it existed, but it didn't. This sounds like a partnership that could, because I think you've spoken highly of Forescout, right? Was it Forescout?
Amazing. Love the product. In fact, we're retesting a company that we've tested before. We're heading back out there next month. And they had a really great implementation of Forescout across the network. It was absolutely everything that they said it would be. It is a great product. But I do think it's interesting in this business, in this press release, a leading Internet of Things security company. It's like, oh, God.
Yeah, they've been pushing that in their marketing. That's definitely some of the messaging they've been trying to put out there, and that's just product marketing doing its thing.
It is. And then the other question I have is, when the hell did Malwarebytes become respectable? And I'm not being facetious, but it's been very interesting. There's been a number of people that have come up to me at SANS classes, at IONS calls and things like that they've been actually really happy with what Malwarebytes has been doing over the past couple of years.
And it's interesting.
4 or 5 years ago, they were kind of a junk AV, whatever. Home users use it, but man, they came on over the past few years.
Well, my friend that does some PC work, technician work for us, right? I mean, he's a big fan of their free product, and their play now is enterprise, and that's interesting that you're hearing positive feedback. They've been at all of the major shows. I haven't really got to delve into some of the technical specifications with them, but they have been coming to the shows and trying to make a splash in the enterprise. So it'll be certainly one to watch.
I think it kind of shows the mindset of a company. Like, for example, you remember FireEye years ago? It wasn't at DerbyCon. It was at, what was that conference that we both presented at?
It's the other one in Louisville. It's like their ISACA event or something.
Yeah, the ISSA or whatever. And FireEye was just this young, very, very hungry company, and they just kicked ass. I mean, they just blew everybody away. Then they got fat and lazy, and they hadn't updated their core for a while. Malwarebytes strikes me as one of those companies that's like what Cylance was a year or two ago. They're basically trying to come up the ranks very, very, very quickly, and you got to kind of watch those companies because some good things come out of them.
Absolutely. You can set rules for your Facebook users with Netscope. It basically sounds like it's a CASB that's letting you apply some rules to Facebook users in the workplace, which kind of goes in the creepy thing that Observe It does in my book. And the final story, HP's EliteBook is shipping with support for micro virtualization with Bromium. Bromium's all excited about this new HP SureClick is now shipping on the HP EliteBook X360 starting today. Not only has a secure BIOS, but also offers secure browsing, blah, blah, blah.
And it will promptly be disabled by 90% of the people that use it.
Now, they do say that SureClick is built in the same technology as Bromium's micro virtualization that has defeated every malware attack for over 6 years. That's what they
Now, what about the Tavis Ormsby bypass that came out like last year? And never mind. All right. So
well, there you go.
I would say, look, Bromium is awesome. I think that we've talked about Bromium quite a bit. It is awesome. But it is not something that you're going to roll out to 20, 30,000 users. And I know somebody from Bromium is going to come back and go, we got 4 or 5 vendors that do that. Okay, whatever. But it's really, really great. If I was running a company and I needed to have terminals that absolutely must be locked down, like teller terminals, financial transaction terminals, those types of things, Bromium is the product I would use. But for like general endpoints and computer systems, I just can't see it. I would just see that being a management nightmare for the help desk. And like I said, someone from Bromium might actually come on and disagree with that, and that's fine. But most of our customers that we talk to, they're very, very, very adamant about, hey, this is not something you want to roll out to a lot of people, but it's great at what it does.
Fantastic feedback. John, thank you so much. Thanks to our special guest, Rami Assad, for coming on the show today. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching to Enterprise Security Weekly. We'll see everyone next time.